welcome to the Friday vlog.
Welcome to the Friday vlog.
It is a very exciting day today.
It is an exciting day.
It's our eldest daughter's 21st birthday.
Yay! I wish I had a party popper that I could pull.
I know, we're celebrating. It was quite the arrival that she came in with.
Oh, she came into the world with quite a bang, you mean? She did, in more ways than one. Shall I tell that story?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, actually, before I tell that story, I want to give a little bit of backstory, set the scene, as it were, because we did have this car crash in downtown LA on our way to the hospital, and at that point in time, downtown LA, I guess, was a bit of a scary place for me. I didn't really know it very well. Didn't really know LA that well, let alone downtown LA. Anyway, so at this particular time, Rohini had really good health insurance that we all got to benefit from, because you had SAG insurance, right? And so we could have had our choice of all these fancy medical establishments as to where we might choose to give birth, or you would give birth, as the case may be. And I always imagine, we'll live in the lap of luxury and we'll go to some nice hospital in Beverly Hills. But as far as you're concerned, no! You have to go to some seedy downtown hospital in the middle of nowhere.
Well, okay, if you're going to give backstory, I have to give my side of the backstory. So, my first choice was to have a home birth. And this was one of those times in our relationship, and I have to be honest, there's very few times where you've really been adamant and it's been a no. Like, I can't really think of anything else where you've had, I'm sure there have been, but this was like an adamant no. There was no budging.
You mean there's one of the rare occasions where I actually won the argument?
Yes. It wasn't an argument, though. It was just you didn't want that, and
right,
you really
that
clearly didn't want that.
Yeah.
And so we had to find a way that we would both be happy. And so the doctor that I was seeing was not going to support me in having a natural childbirth in the hospital. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to have a home birth. So what I did was I changed my doctor to find a doctor that would support me with having a natural childbirth in a hospital setting, and who would let me come home after the birth, which was what you agreed to. And the doctor happened to be associated with a downtown LA hospital.
Well, it's the other thing that's funny is, considering that you wanted a home birth, you'd think that you'd probably want to be at least as near to home as possible. And ultimately, we couldn't have been further away from home. So actually, all the things that I would probably worry about, vis-a-vis logistics, getting us all from A to B when your water broke, as it were. The thought of having to drive to downtown LA, it felt like it was going pretty far afield. And added to which, I wasn't particularly thrilled about downtown LA on a purely environmental level. But anyway, all of my fears were borne out when I'm driving across a cross-section and some maniacal young man runs the light and careers into the side of our vehicle, rendering it undrivable. So here I am at 2 a.m. in downtown LA, thinking this is probably the worst place you want to be at 2 a.m. without having to deal with a pregnant wife and a car that's been rendered undrivable. I wouldn't want to be there under any circumstances at 2 a.m., let alone under these conditions. So you should probably resume the story from here on in, because I was I was just perplexed, to say the least, on so many levels.
Well, we were really fortunate because that car ran the light, T-boned us. Fortunately, you weren't injured, I wasn't injured. And when we pulled, we couldn't drive, and so somebody else came over to the car. There was a couple who'd witnessed the whole thing happening. And so I remember the man coming over to the car, and he came to your driver's window and said, "Here's my card, I saw everything. If you need me to, corroborate your story, call me." And you said thank you, and he was like walking away. And so I'm like, wait, wait. And I think I said something like, he's English, he doesn't know what to do. Meaning that you didn't...
Because no English people know what to do.
No, meaning you didn't know how to work an American system.
Right.
But more importantly, we had no way of getting to the hospital. So he came back and found, was so helpful. Both he and his partner came back. And then he found out that I was in labor and that we were trying to get to the hospital. And so they so kindly drove us to the hospital. They had a Porsche, so we were like scrambling to fit into this Porsche. They drove us to the hospital. They came back to the car. They handled everything with the police. They got the baby seat out of the car. They brought that back to the hospital. The couple that hit us came to the hospital to make sure that I was fine. I mean, it was actually, if you can think about things, it wasn't that bad.
No, I mean, and also it's kind of funny to think that we arrived at the hospital with this whole entourage. They probably thought you were a celebrity or something. But hey, there are good Samaritans out there, and my goodness, those people were just so wonderful. They really did help us out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I was probably in a bigger state of shock than you were. I don't know.
But fortunately, everything went smoothly from there, and really that was probably our first lesson in surrender as being parents.
My goodness, yes. Well, surrender, that's definitely been a whole part of the journey in bringing up our girls, without any shadow of doubt.
I think probably one of the biggest lessons that I've learned as I look back on the parenting journey, not that it ends when they turn 21, but is really being able to see their own innate wisdom and letting that unfold rather than trying to interfere with the process.
Yeah, I mean, I look back on the parenting journey, as it were, and with the benefit of hindsight, it's easy to say, yeah, I would like to have done this differently. But I would have liked to have done a lot differently. And I think it's so interesting when you consider some of those, that idea, I don't want to repeat the sins of the father, that kind of syndrome. I feel like I found myself turning into my father in some respects. But I think that that it's easy as a parent to sort of perhaps get overbearing in the sense it's like, here's my child, I want to make sure that they remain safe. And so it can look like a big scary world, and they're making all these decisions that look like they're putting themselves up against scary situations. And it's so easy to think, well, yeah, I'm gonna do everything I can to help them avoid that scenario. And in so doing, I'm kind of really not honoring the fact that they do have their own innate wisdom, and that life is a contact sport, and you learn through life being a contact sport and getting course corrective feedback along the way. Obviously, I don't want them to be in a situation of grave danger, but I think you can constantly find yourself, or I speak for myself, I was finding myself trying to anticipate those dangers and trying to get them to constantly cut their cloth accordingly. And what I was doing was actually demonstrating to them that I don't trust your innate wisdom. You have to listen to me. And what is more, if you don't listen to me, I think what ultimately happened, particularly when they're in their teens, here is the consequence that will you will meet when you don't follow this company line. And what ultimately I was doing was I was just breaking rapport. My best move as a parent, and I know this now, would have been to show up. They may have crossed some imaginary line, not tick some box that I had in my head around standards and expectations about being the perfect child. When that line was crossed, if I just sat them down and said, you know what, I want to understand why you made this decision. I want to understand why you made this decision and how we may avoid doing it again. That would have been a whole better place to show up as a parent than here is the consequence, don't do it again, or else you'll get a bigger one.
Yeah.
And what I did in that really was break rapport. So for me, rapport is the golden rule all the way through.
Yeah, and I think that in our parenting journey, there was really probably only, maybe even in less than a year of the consequences.
They might have a different story to tell, of course.
Because it didn't work. It really, as you were saying, it broke rapport and things just escalated.
Yeah, that was what's so amazing.
Yeah, and so that as soon as we realized that wasn't working and we took that off the table and actually did what you're saying about focused on the relationship, focused on building rapport, that was the turnaround, especially with our starter child.
And it felt so, our starter child, right, it felt so counterintuitive, because I felt like surely at some point these consequences must be severe enough to have have some sort of effect on them that they will toe the line. But you're right, it just became, they would act out more and more and more, and the consequences would become bigger and bigger and bigger, and it just, nothing seemed to curb that behavior per se. So it felt really counterintuitive to just suddenly decide, okay, no more consequences, but we'll sit down and talk. And what was miraculous to me, that just changed things around. In kind of a heartbeat, it really felt like that. So I'm here to extol the virtues of rapport over consequence any day, because I saw it unfold in quite a miraculous way.
Yeah, that really the consequences are resorting to them was a sign of how caught up we were in our own fear and sort of grappling to try and regain control in a way that really wasn't helpful.
Yeah, it was so about control. And again, just to reiterate this point, I feel like for me to show up as a dad and say, yeah, you know what, I trust that you have this capacity to get in touch with your innate wisdom, as do we all, that really helps their self-confidence. And it gets them to see, it's like, oh yeah, he does see and trust that I can figure this out. And then as a parent, you've just got to really, hopefully provide some sort of gentle guidelines or guide ropes. But you can't live your life, you can't live their life for them. They've got to do it under their own steam. And, and I guess it's easy as a parent to want to come in and try and do exactly that.
Sometimes there's a lot of deep breathing needed, not just in labor when you're parenting.
That's true.
We hope you have a great weekend,
Yeah.
and we will be celebrating San's daughter. She's not going to be with us.
That's right. Yeah.
But we will still be
She's
celebrating.
going to spread her wings and fly.
Yes. Take care.
Take care.